Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ice, brought to you by Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, Dokesbrook Fields, and of course our friends at Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. Tonight's show, it's the show before the weekend, but the weekend is certainly not letting up at all. I know all of us are all worried about the fact that March Madness is over, but south of the border and north of the border, there is tremendous hockey happening. And the gentleman I'm talking with, Commissioner at the SIJHL, Mr. Darrin Nicholas, is going to join us tonight to discuss exactly what's happening with the semifinals. That's right. It's a battle of Thunder Bay. It's the North Stars and the gentleman from Cam River, the Fighting Walleye in one series. And then we're going to look at the other series, Red Lake and Dryden. So please welcome Darrin Nicholas to On the Ice. As promised, Darrin Nicholas from the SIJHL Commissioner joining us. I'm glad you got a little bit of rest because you've been quite the traveling man these past couple of weeks, Darrin.
Yeah, a little bit of real estate to cover, but it's all for good reasons. So, we had our first playoff hockey, and I believe it was 1,075 days starting up last week. So those are the fun kind of trips to get to make.
What's great about the playoffs, before we get into the regular season that just finished, all 6 teams participated, correct, in the playoffs, with the first 2 seeds having a bit of a break?
Correct. Yeah, we did have a model where when we started the season, we would have the first team get the bye, and then the remaining 6 teams would play off in the opening round, and had to pivot a little bit when Thief River Falls couldn't make it through the season. So we decided to keep that format with everybody qualifying, and then the top 2 teams got a bye, and the remaining teams played off in the quarterfinals.
So now that the playoffs are started, let's take a look back. Let's head back in the Wayback Machine just a little bit. September was rolling around, Darrin. We got the season going. Teams are in there. They're being formed, being juggled a little bit, massaged, if you will. What were the feelings for you knowing that hockey is finally returning to this part of Canada and the United States?
Yeah, I mean, good to be finally talking about, a start of the hockey season around the time when hockey season usually starts. I mean, certainly a leap of faith on behalf of certainly our American teams with, really just speculation at the time that the border would be opening, and, eventually first part of October, the Canadian side was open for American visitors to come up, but we were still locked out of sending our Canadian teams down to the States for about another month or so after that. So, again, you're planning for what you think can happen and speculation on what might happen, but it was really a heck of a commitment by our teams to start the season under those conditions for sure. And, what we found out was that, it took a little bit of momentum to get players back in hockey. If you think about it, with, having 2 seasons affected by the pandemic, your 18-year-old kids 2 years ago, a lot of them have decided to move on to something else other than hockey rather than to come back for their final year of eligibility. And the same thing happened with minor hockey. So the players that were graduating out of minor to get into junior, a lot of them found something else to do and got immersed into that. So, we managed to get a few players back and stuff like that, but it was, it was a bit of a grind the early part of the season for sure.
We spoke earlier in the year with the Lumberjacks, and I believe it was Doug Lean who was with us, and he's told us about the importance of getting the rest of the Canadian teams on board with the opportunity to move south of the border when you're allowed to. How important was it to have all the teams in those discussions to make sure that, the team south of the border wasn't left out of this scenario, and how important it is to really establish hockey again for the SIJHL north and south of the border?
Yeah, it was really important. I mean, we tried to do whatever we could to include the U.S. teams in our attempt to get going in 2021 that, nobody really got going that season. But, for this year, credit to Doug and to Thief River Falls at the start. Doug just committed to do whatever it would take. So, it's not easy to run a team at this level and then start your I think it was maybe 5 or 6 weeks in a row that Doug was on the road with his Wisconsin Lumberjacks because we couldn't send Canadian teams down there. So we managed to get him a couple of weekends of home games playing Thief River Falls. But for the most part, if he wanted to see different opponents, he needed to come north of the border. So, not only do you have the normal, busing, hotel, meal costs when you travel with a team, but we also needed to get them COVID testing as well to get across the border. So, that in and of itself adds, close to $3,000 per road trip type of thing. And Doug did that 3 or 4 times. So, there was no doubting the commitment of the Wisconsin Lumberjacks, that's for sure. And, based on his behavior and the way he managed his team in the early going of the season, it's almost impossible then for a Canadian team to say, well, thanks for coming up to play us, but, it's too much trouble for us to get down there. So, we managed to persevere. And quite frankly, there wasn't really much discussion about it. It's not an option to not include one of our league partners or 2 of our league partners. So it's just a matter of, doing whatever it takes to make that happen.
That cost certainly wasn't in the plan to stay around this long. But when you think about how it finally loosened up a little bit, how important and how impressive was it to start seeing those battles between foes and the rivalries beginning to continue that, like you said, hadn't been around for almost 2 seasons?
Yeah, it started to feel a little normal, based on what the feedback I was getting. I know this is kind of my first go round at a quote unquote normal and full hockey season, so I don't have really a point of reference, but the teams do, and their feedback was that it's starting to feel a little normal. I mean, as big a problem of the cost of the testing was just the logistics of it getting done as well. And we started in an environment where we could get our teams tested in Canada before they left, because our trips were short enough that that we couldn't get tests done in order to get back without extending our trip. So when they first opened the border, we were actually getting our tests done in Canada before we went. And I think that kind of defeated the purpose, but it allows us to know if we had any positives, then we can adjust ourselves accordingly before we embark on the trip. And then there was a few weeks in December where the government said, it doesn't make sense to make people get tested in Canada before they do their trip and show that test as a valid test to return back. So they actually did away with that for about 3 weeks, that if your stay was less than 72 hours, you didn't have to get a test. So we managed to get a few tests in under those, or a few trips in under those conditions, which was a big help. And and then finally, just before Christmas, they announced that they were going to require testing for any trips across the border, number one. And then number two, the trip had to be done in the States, so you couldn't get the trip before you crossed. So that just added another layer of complexity to the logistics, and trying to arrange a bus to get to where they needed to get tested within the window they needed to get tested, and then try and do whatever you could to guarantee that the results came back, that it didn't delay the travel back across the border. And then of course the logistics on what happens if you happen to have somebody test positive now when they're in the States and stuff like that. So it was a learning experience for all of us, for sure. But at the end of the day, I think everybody will say it was worth it to get our players back on the ice, and certainly to arrive at this point, I think it was well worth it for sure.
You hit the nail on the head there, Darrin. It's a relief, not even a relief for the fans, but a relief for the players to enjoy a sport that they get to do with hitting as well. So, like, without the other parameters of the game that were taken out
Correct.
of the game last year. But for these young men, I mean, not only just the blockades of, testing and not testing and positives and not positives, we had quite the winter. And I don't think we've had weather play such a large role in scheduling and rescheduling of games than this year compared to few earlier years, Darren. I know this is your first real kick at it, but comments are like how impressive it is that teams are able to be, very they're able to change their schedule and able to accommodate getting all these games in. I think I recall Red Lake being 6 games behind in their play and having to play the rest of their season, or try to play the rest of their season, because they were quickly in that 1-2 matchup with Can River the entire season.
Right. Yeah, we had, kind of a little bit of everything. And what I tell people is, you look at what we experienced this year. Red Lake had their ice plant go down towards the end of December type of thing, and they were, luckily that it was down for a good chunk of the lockdown in Ontario took care of the time that it took them to get their ice repaired. But their bus breaks down. We certainly had Thief River Falls come to a conclusion that they couldn't participate anymore in the season. Then we had the lockdown for pretty much the month of January in Ontario, where we managed to keep our American teams playing during that stretch. But the Canadian teams couldn't even get into a rink or into a gym and practice. So you throw any one of those things and it's going to be a chaos in the schedule, and you combine them all kind of going on at the same time. And it quickly became apparent that, there was no way that we were going to be able to balance the schedule unless we just started taking games off, because in Red Lake's incidents, like, there was no way that we were going to have enough time to catch them up of games. It's just simply too much hockey in too short of a time. So, if we wanted to balance the schedule, then we got to start telling other teams that, you've played too many games. So even though we've been on a pause for the month of January, you still have to have a bunch of weekends off because we got to let Red Lake catch up. So, not an ideal situation, but that's how we chose to proceed, is just, let teams play as often as they could type of thing, and then come up with some alternative way to try and place the teams, knowing that it's not going to be the full balanced schedule that we're used to having at the end of the season.
If you had to put one word, Darrin, on this regular season, I would choose the word the year of resilience. What would you pick to be the word that would explain best this regular season now that it's come to a closure and now we're seeing the playoffs?
Yeah, resilience, perseverance, just all that. I mean, it was certainly, uh, must have been scary for our teams at times. Kind of not knowing where they're going to get into. Um, you know, uh, for instance, like our Thunder Bay North Stars team. I mean, the situation surrounding uh, COVID when we entered the season. I mean, it was they had difficulty finding enough billet households for their players, so they jumped in and leased a couple of houses for their out of town players to live in through the season, and that was a pretty big spend that they had in order to do that, and it was kind of a real leap of faith. So, it's real fear that goes into it when you've got a plan for a full season, but you're not really sure whether or not it's going to happen. And credit to all of our organizations, they found a way to make it happen. Yeah, and hopefully none the worse for wear at this point.
Certainly not worse for wear. We've got semifinal action starting this tonight, actually, April 7th, when the show airs. We're going to talk about those matchups when we come back here on the ice. Stay with us. Back with Darrin Nicholas, the commissioner of the SIJHL. Darrin, I want to thank you first off for explaining all of the simple, like the mini roadblocks, the big roadblocks, the conundrums, this shift on the flies all year. I mean, that's impressive. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's a daunting task, but to say that you had to experience all this with the teams and, with Thief River dropping out, unfortunately, but then able to finish the rest of the regular season. Now we're in the playoffs. Congratulations. I mean, that's truly an amazing season to have. And I hope it gets a little bit easier come next year.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it'll be any harder. So
I
I
hope
don't have
not.
a point of reference. So everybody says, "Oh, geez, you came in at the worst possible time," but like I don't know any different. So a lot of the stuff that we had to pivot on was the first time experiencing it. So we'll be more prepared if we need to be going forward. But it fingers crossed that it's going to get more normal by the fall than less normal, I guess.
Let's hope so. The semifinals starting tonight. We have the battle of, I'm not going to say the battle of Thunder Bay, but nearby rivals. I mean, talk about, the first year of an expansion team in Cam River, Oliver Papouge, finishing top of the league. Was that an expectation that you had, perhaps? But I know if you talk to the guys wearing the fighting orange and black, that was their expectation for sure.
Yeah, without question, they're not surprised, and I'm not going to say I'm surprised either. I mean, they've done a tremendous job with that organization right out of the get go, and they've managed to make their stated goal come to fruition. So they earned the top seed going into the playoffs. They had a couple of streaks during the winter that challenged league records, I think, for winning streaks in general and home winning streaks. And not all of those were blowout games. There was some overtime stuff in there, a lot of 1-goal games where teams had played them hard and they found a way to persevere. So, it became evident fairly early on that they had something special going on there. And they made the moves at the trade deadline to do what they thought they needed to do to bolster their team, and they seem to have picked up right where they left off at that point.
They're taking on the other Thunder Bay team, the North Stars, that have been there, I want to say over 75% of the time they've been in playoff action, at least in the semifinals. The tale of two cities. I mean, a brand new franchise versus the seasoned vet. I mean, they've got a great rivalry already started. I mean, they're not too far away from each other. What are you looking forward to visiting these barns this weekend, Darrin, and saying, what color am I going to wear? Am I just going to wear the neutral color of the commissioner? You kind of have to, don't you?
I have to wear the commissioner's color. Yeah, I'll be in the buildings, but I won't be cheerleading. That's for sure. Just going to hope to watch good hockey. And, we've probably seen sneak previews of this all season long. We had the North Stars and Cam River matched up at the Fort William Gardens the last weekend of the regular season. And I think there was, well over 1,500 people in there for the second game on the Saturday night. And most games when you go out to the Norwest Arena where Cam River plays their home games out of, it's shoulder to shoulder and a few deep in standing room. So they've done a tremendous job all year packing the rink. And then, when you get a little bit more space in the Fort William Gardens, then you get the real interesting benefit of really having both teams' fan bases, unlimited, able to attend, and that makes for an interesting situation in there as well. So I think it's going to be a heck of a series, and looking forward to the start of it. That's for sure.
Sellouts for sure. I heard you can't even get through the Zamboni door anymore.
Well, I haven't tried. Most of the times I've been in the building, you have to go in through the COVID screening and stuff like that. But I typically find myself guilty of trying to work a little bit too late before I head out to the rink. So I get there in time for the national anthem, and it's usually about a 15 or 20-minute wait for me to get into the building. So that's a good sign.
It's a good sign, no doubt. Let's talk about the other matchup. We've got Dryden taking on Red Lake. Now, that series is going to be just changed a little bit due to their scheduling. Give us the latest on how that's going to work out these first couple of games.
Yeah, Red Lake had some competing events going on in their building, and so we found a way to work around that, like we have pretty much everything else this year. So they're going to open up tonight on the 7th, and then take a couple of days off, and the next game will be on the 10th. And so we tried to schedule it. In a perfect world, we'd play back to back in a team's rink, and then take a day off for travel and go in the other team's rink. But we had to adjust a little bit for this series, and that's kind of par for the course. I mean, not always does it go the way you want to draw it up, but we got something that's fair and that'll work for both teams.
How much does travel play into this? When you talk about, obviously, the two teams that are fairly close to Thunder Bay playing against each other versus the travel between Dryden and Red Lake, is that going to play a bit of a challenge compared to the two setups for the finals, or do you think it's going to be, just what it is?
Yeah, I don't think it'll play a huge role. I mean, geographically, our semifinals couldn't have worked out any better. So, I mean, we've got the all Thunder Bay series with Cam River and Thunder Bay, and I think think the Walleye like to use their bus, so they'll meet their players at the rink. They'll pack their bags, load up the bus, and take the 20-minute drive to Fort William Gardens. But it's about as close as it can get. And that brings in and of itself the cost efficiencies of, not having to stay in a hotel or feed kids or drive a long distance to get to the road. And between Red Lake and Dryden, it's probably as good as it can get as well. It's about a 2-hour drive. Typically, neither team will stay overnight when they play, even back-to-backs in the other team's building. So even if it were, a back-to-back game, Dryden would drive up to Red Lake, play the game, and then go back home afterwards, and then just repeat the trip the second day. So from that standpoint, it's no big deal to have a day or two off in between games. And so again, geographically and for an efficiency, probably couldn't have worked out any better for the teams that have qualified into the semis here.
Let's quickly look at the final, the Salonen Cup this year. A little bit different this year because we're not having the winner of the Salonen go to the Dudley because that's being postponed. But the winner of the Salonen gets an automatic bid to the Centennial Cup, which is Junior A Championship week in Estevan later on in May. Give us a bit of history of the Salonen Cup and what it means this year, particularly for this winner to represent the SIJHL.
Yeah, well, this is our, the 20th season of the league. Bill Salonen has been the name on the cup. I actually managed to meet Bill back in Dryden a few months back at the beginning of the season. Had a great conversation with him, and we're looking to engage him for the final series as well. So it's our 20th season. I think now this will be the 18th time that the cup has been awarded. If my math is correct with the seasons we lost due to the COVID, but the Thunder Bay North Stars are the last team that got to raise the cup over their heads, so they're coming into the semifinals as returning champions. And to be the best, you got to beat the best, and that's their attitude going in. So it's always been hotly contested, and this year with the added prize of a direct line into the nationals for the champion with the ability to bypass the regional championship, we think the intensity is going to be ratcheted up even another notch if that's possible.
Do you think? The regional, obviously having the regional action is another great tournament prior to the national championship, but do you think this process could be something that could be happening more than just this year, or what's your thoughts on maintaining and still keeping the Dudley around because of its importance to the area?
Yeah, all the regional championships are historic and important to the CJHL, and what kind of became apparent back in January, if you remember back a couple of months, like Ontario was shut down pretty much for the month of January. Quebec and the Maritimes were even a little bit maybe more difficult or more challenged than what we were even facing from a public health standpoint. It became clear even when the lockdown was extended only by about a few days from when they had initially announced they would be opening back up, that there was going to be some pretty big conflicts between the league schedules and their desire to get a full schedule in and a full playoffs and still be able to declare a champion in time for the regional championships. So, the championships as we knew them, were in jeopardy, even had the decision not been made to go with the expanded Centennial Cup format. So, combined with Hockey Canada's desire to, do whatever they could to declare a true national champion, we then started to look at what alternatives might be on the table to us. And, when it was kind of put on the floor that, maybe it's not so far-fetched to envision a scenario where each team sends their championship to nationals, it got a little bit of steam and a little momentum. It certainly got everybody's attention around the table, and when they started doing the preliminary discussions with the host organizing committee in Estevan and determined that it would in fact be a possibility, then we had some real things to consider as a board of the CJHL. So, what we decided to do, Theo, was not commit to it anything past this season. So as it sits right now, the Dudley Hewitt is set to return for 2023, but with the asterisk attached to it that we will stringently evaluate the expanded format of the national tournament this year, and then make a determination as to whether or not that's something we think we want to continue going forward past this season.
As much as everything has changed in the landscape of junior hockey in Canada, this has been a great alternative opportunity for all champions to show up in Estevan. I truly think that it's going to be a great send-off for the amazing year we've had from coast to coast. You spoke also briefly about Thief River Falls. You spoke as well as the return of the Dudley with an asterisk for next year. Give us a little bit more of like a crystal ball look, so to speak, Darrin, on what's upcoming in the SIJHL and what great things we have to look forward to.
Yeah, well, we hope we have a great playoff to look forward to. We think we're going to send a worthy champion onto the national tournament, and regardless of who it turns out to be, we've got two teams that have really went neck and neck all season long in Red Lake and Cam River, and put up really impressive numbers. Both finished, inside, I think, 7th and 8th respectively, Cam River and Red Lake in the national rankings. So, kudos to them for finishing off the season there. And then Dryden and Thunder Bay really had strong opening rounds in their playoffs. So we've got 4 teams that are expected to perform at a high level. And I think regardless of who emerges out of those 4, we're going to be well represented at nationals, and look forward to the fall. We announced Sioux Lookout as an expansion franchise. They've been working really hard over the course of the winter, and they've got their first evaluation camp planned coming up towards the middle part of June, and they're awful eager to get going. So we're for the first time in, I think, league history, will be an 8-team league starting off in September. And that's a lot to be excited for in and of itself, for sure.
That's truly amazing. It just shows the strength and the opportunity that still exists within the region. Darrin, I really want to thank you for your time. Good luck in your travels this weekend. I know you got to pick and choose where you got to go, but thank you. You don't have to fly anywhere. It's hopefully going to be nice and dry for you wherever you're driving. Awesome.
Appreciate that, Theo. Thanks. Always nice to see you, sir.
Semifinals this weekend, the Battle of the Thunder Bays and Cam River. I know they're going to give me trouble when I say that. I say the Battle of Thunder Bays, but it's not. It's Cam River and Thunder Bay taking on each other, as well as Dryden and the Red Lake Miners. Thanks to everyone, Darrin. We'll see you later, okay?
You bet, sir. Take care.
And that was Darrin Nicholas, the SIJHL commissioner, giving us an update on what's happening in the league right now, how it happened last year, as well as our playoffs. We really hope that the playoffs show the tremendous talent of the SIJHL. I want to thank him for his time, and good luck to all the players and the teams these upcoming weeks. I want to thank you for joining us here on the ice on ASTV. Thanks to our sponsors, Doak Spoke Fuels, Case Financial Group, Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, as well as Toby Hockey. Make sure you check us out on Roku. Make sure you check us out on Apple TV, as well as all our social media streams. If you miss a show, that's okay. They're all archived. Go find them. Say hi to us. Leave a message. Leave a like. Don't forget my boys, Cody Wall and Graham Forsyth. They're putting on a show as well every week, each and every week, a couple times a week, actually. Check out their insight. We've got some great announcements to happen coming up. We've got the amazing May 6th through 8th tournament, the Western Canada Hockey Exposure Camp that's looking forward down in Calgary. Take care. Bring you more goodness to greatness here on ASTV. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your neighbors. Have a great weekend. And maybe don't go on the ice yet with the trucks. I don't want to see any trucks on the ice. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye for now. Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.